And this episode of Penn Point starts right now. This episode of Penn Point is brought to you by Midphase. Simple, smart, and reliable web hosting since 2003. Remember way back there? Okay, if you're sick, like I am, of all the talk about Penn Jillette and the Martin Luther King quote on Twitter, then stop watching this right now. There'll be other Penn Points that I'll try to do that'll be like funny and interesting. But this is just going to be about Twitter, the Martin Luther King quote, and me. And if that doesn't interest you, if you're as sick of it as I am, then just turn it off and watch another one. I do a zillion of these, so it doesn't really matter. But Rev3 wants me to talk about it, and there have been thousands, and I mean thousands of Twitter messages about this. And it's hard to explain what happened in 140 characters, so I'll explain it here, and if anyone cares, they can check here and at least get my point of view. When Osama Bin Laden was killed, I had the same feelings that I think most Americans had. We talked about it after the show at the Penn and Teller Theater. I talked to Teller about it. I, of course, hoped that this would in some way make the world safer. I hope that in some way it would stop some killing. I was hopeful the way all Americans were hopeful. But the feeling I felt in my heart was not one of celebration. I didn't feel like dancing in the street. There might have been relief, might have been all sorts of other feelings, but I just didn't feel like dancing. Didn't feel like celebration. And then I heard about many people celebrating, and it just wasn't what I was feeling. I'm not even willing to go so far as to say it was wrong. It just wasn't what I was feeling. I don't think I've ever felt celebration over death. Now, it's the death of Bin Laden. It's hard to think of a worse person than that. I don't know if I would have felt celebration on the death of Hitler. All sorts of things you'd feel. I just don't know if I'd feel celebration. I looked at my computer, and there was a quote on there that said it was from Martin Luther King. And the quote was about the celebration of death. The quote seemed to me to be too perfect. I read my Snopes. I try to be a skeptic. I try to think about things. I try to take Twitter and the internet fairly seriously. I try to be socially responsible. I try. I have failed a lot. I took part of the Martin Luther King quote, the so-called Martin Luther King quote, and I cut and pasted it, and I searched for it with Martin Luther King, and I found that string that I searched for toward the end of the quote in, I think it's called The Strength of Love, 1963, Martin Luther King. I found that string, and I glanced over it, and it looked similar to me. It looked the same to me, actually. I saw the words there and said, oh, it is a Martin Luther King quote. And then I skimmed, very, very quickly skimmed, and thought that it wasn't taken out of context. So I went back to the quote that I had, and I cut and pasted it and put the whole thing in my Twitter. I ended up being a couple hundred characters over, more than twice what I needed to for the quote, for my Twitter account, and to put Martin Luther King in there. I did not want to put the quote up without giving it the credit that I thought was correct. Then I started chopping it up. And when I started chopping it up, and I didn't take it out of context, but I deleted a lot. And I deleted, and this is where I get really, really stupid. I deleted the part that I checked in with the Martin Luther King text. And I kept the top of it. The top of the quote, I kept. The bottom of the quote, I deleted. The bottom of the quote was part of a quote that I recognized from Martin Luther King. The top of the quote I did not recognize from Martin Luther King. A very stupid thing. But it was all put together and all put in quotes, and I did not check it closely enough. That's where I was stupid, my mistake. So I ended up putting a quote from Martin Luther King, attributed to Martin Luther King, on my Twitter account. Penn Jillette, P-E-N-N-J-I-L-L-E-T-T-E. My name on that account that said Martin Luther King and a quote. And what I had chosen when I cut and pasted it was the part of the quote that was not Martin Luther King's. It turns out it was, I believe now, and I could be wrong, a school teacher, I believe, working in Japan, who said that at the top, what I quoted, and then added at the end the Martin Luther King part in quotes. And somebody, I'm not even going to say where I read it, but somebody somewhere upstream of where I saw it had taken out that middle quote and moved it to the beginning. So the whole thing looked like a Martin Luther King quote. So I had taken a quote that was not Martin Luther King. I had stripped away the part that was Martin Luther King and then quoted it and put Martin Luther King at the end. So I stripped that and did it wrong. I don't think I was the first to do that. I might have been. I don't know. But I did take a long quote and make it shorter. It was already incorrect when I got it. I checked, but not perfectly, not well enough. I checked badly, but I did check. I don't know. If you do something badly, do you still get credit for it? I put up the quote, I put Martin Luther King, and I sent it out to my Twitter followers, and I have a few. And all of a sudden, it went all over. It seemed like there were a lot of people who were feeling like I was, and like the quote expressed, that celebration wasn't what we were feeling. It wasn't really a political point. It wasn't really some sort of super hippie peacenik thing, which I am a super hippie peacenik. But what the quote was not super hippie peacenik. It only reacted to the celebration and not the moral act or what had happened. It really wasn't a very political statement. It just had to do with celebration. And some people were very bothered by that, and they wrote that I was, that I was a pussy, and that, I didn't know what loss was, which I don't believe is true. I believe I do know what loss was. We all lost people on 9/11. And I was just reacting to the celebration. It wasn't a comment on Obama. It wasn't a comment on our service people. And I also think if you were one of the Navy SEALs that actually risked your life and went in there, and one of the people that built the whole scale model, if they were celebrating, I'm okay with that. They put their lives in danger. That's a very natural reaction on the accomplishment of a mission. If I had been a Navy SEAL involved in that, I think I would have felt celebration. I wasn't. And I don't believe that we killed Osama Bin Laden. I believe these Navy SEALs did. Working for us, they did. But I'd be okay with them celebrating. I didn't feel like I wanted to celebrate myself. So I put that up, and some people get very, very angry at me for putting that up and felt that it lacked patriotism, and felt that it lacked balls, and felt that it wasn't manly. And all of those are very reasonable objections to that. And I see that point of view completely. It was just talking about what I was feeling, and I didn't feel celebration. Right away, someone put up that isn't a Martin Luther King quote. Very shortly after, someone put that up, within hours. And as soon as I saw that, I went and checked again, saw my mistake, and said, I think I'm wrong. And then someone else sent something that said it is a Martin Luther King quote. And at that point, a lot of the record had been distorted. It was very hard. It was just a hall of mirrors with everybody quoting everybody all around. So I couldn't really tell. And then they started reacting with this Mark Twain quote, which I also knew was fake. But I certainly wasn't going to bust someone for putting up a fake Mark Twain quote when I had just put up a fake Martin Luther King quote. And then The Atlantic, I believe, wrote an article that mentioned me, that said I was part of the genesis of this. And they wrote it very fair and very even-handedly. And then I think it was Salon, some woman there, who I think is like the girlfriend of some guy I did one of these Penn Points on, some liberal guy who I've been on TV with. I don't know. I don't want to talk about their relationship. I don't know. I thought he wrote me an email that said it was his girlfriend, but I don't know. They might not even know each other. What do I know? But she wrote this thing in Salon that, as far as I could tell, was completely insane. Now, later on, she fixed it. She fixed it by putting a quote from me when I wrote her an email. She fixed it. But her original one was that when I said that I was mistaken and had made a mistake, she did not believe me because I did a show called Bullshit. And her thinking seemed to be that because I do a show that deals with lying and where truth is, that just for kicks, I would lie about a quote from Martin Luther King. She thought I did this when this incredibly important moment in American history is happening, when Martin Luther King, a hero to all of us, a hero to every motherfucker in the country, I was going to show disrespect for Martin Luther King by putting up a prank, false quote? I mean, that is what I did, but it wasn't a prank. I put up a false quote on an honest mistake. And then everybody gets on my fucking dick and says I'm showing a lack of respect for Martin Luther King. Well, first of all, the quote that was there by the school teacher that was wrong on my part is not very far off a lot of stuff that Martin Luther King said. It's also pretty close to something said in one of the Psalms from the Bible. He didn't say it. It is a false quote, but it's not a false quote that a person who has read some Martin Luther King would think was an insane thing for him to say. And I can't see how anywhere it shows a lack of respect for Martin Luther King. And I put up that I made a mistake, and then because I did that in 140 characters, she kind of made that seem like, and then she also said there that she had reached out to me and got no reaction from me, which I don't know how much she reached out to me. No one in my office heard about it. We couldn't be easier to find. But she did some way and didn't get an answer. And finally she did through this guy who might or might not be your boyfriend. I know nothing about her personally. I know nothing about her motives for doing this. But I do know she also fixed it afterwards. I mean, somewhat. If you read it, it's still snotty to me. She still has the sense that not my morality, but someone's morality would include doing something that was pranking about Martin Luther King on a subject this important. I mean, the fact that someone can think I'm that much of a fucking scumball is really upsetting. And yes, a lot of people were upset, and a lot of people said, yeah, you do the show Bullshit. You're supposed to be caring about truth. You're actually a lying sack of shit. This wasn't his quote. You put it up. You were wrong. And all of that is correct. I am completely and utterly guilty. I should have checked the whole quote. Then when I pulled off the end of it, I should have checked the front again, and I should have gone several other places and really checked it out. The quote did speak from my heart. If I had my time back, I would have quoted it as the woman who I believe now originally wrote it and put her name on it. I did not want to put it without. I did not do an argument from authority by adding Martin Luther King to give it more weight. I credited to Martin Luther King because I believed it was Martin Luther King and did not want to take credit from something that wasn't my quote. I don't like to put anything on Twitter that I didn't say without putting it in quotes and saying who it was. So I sincerely believe this was Martin Luther King, and I was wrong. So I am 100% guilty of stupidity. I am 100% guilty of sloppiness, but I am not fucking guilty in any way, shape, or form of malice. And there is no disrespect anywhere in my heart for Martin Luther King. I have nothing but respect and love, and he is a hero, Martin Luther King, and I'm very sorry I misquoted him because I'm stupid and sloppy. And I have no love in my heart or no defense for Osama Bin Laden. All I was trying to say was that what I felt personally, myself, was not celebration. It was a lot of things, it wasn't celebration. And if you watch Barack Obama's speech from the White House about killing Osama bin Laden, I believe that the President of the United States of America also does not show celebration. And I am sorry for my fuck up, and I'm also sorry that this is so uninteresting, and I'm sorry it's played out, and I'm sorry you're sick of it, and I'm sorry I over-apologized on Twitter, and I'm sorry that something I did in my life made this writer at Salon think I was so much of a fucking scumbag that I would choose maliciously to prank about Martin Luther King. Holy fuck! Who could think that about anybody, let alone me? I mean, I may be a bad guy. I may be a lying sack of shit. I may say fuck a lot. I may be an atheist. I may be all those things, but I do not maliciously lie about Martin Luther King for a joke. Is that clear? Okay. And I feel a little weird because I don't think, fuck it. I've said more than enough, and I'm sorry for everybody on Twitter that retweeted that and took my word that it was Martin Luther King when it wasn't. I hope this will be my last apology for that, but it probably won't. And I'm sorry to the woman at Salon that whatever I've done in my life made her think that I was that much of a fucking scumbag. I don't know what I could have done to her or what you could have read about me or seen about me that would make her think I was that kind of filth. But I am a lot of kinds of filth. I don't believe I'm that kind of filth. So that's the Penn Point, okay? Midphase has been providing simple, smart, and reliable web hosting since 2003, featuring unlimited disk space and bandwidth with an exclusive discount that's 6 months free for Penn Point viewers. 24/7 premium support via phone, live chat, and email. Free website builder and simple installs of WordPress, Drupal, and Joomla, and $100 worth of search engine credits from Google and Yahoo. Visit www.midphase.com/Penn to get 6 free months web hosting through this exclusive Penn Point offer.